This week, we're taking the three things that we've talked about over the last 3 weeks and talking about how those three things all come together to create our unique program and system here at Starfish Social Club. So we're talking about the direct instruction that goes on through our curriculum here. We're talking about the feedback that the students receive. And we're also talking about the community that is created amongst the students here in our program and how all three of those are each vital to our kiddos' success and what it looks like if one or even two of those are missing in the program that they may be in now or that maybe they've been in the past. So if we think about the Starfish Social Club program, which is called SC3 Academy, if you're listening to this now, the registration is officially open for our summer Zoom classes. It is open through May 31st. So if you're listening to this now, you can go onto our website, starfishsocialclub.org. Registration is officially open for our summer program through May 31st. If we think about these three areas making up a Venn diagram. So a Venn diagram is where you have circles that overlap, right? And a lot of students know this concept because they learn it in language arts class. We also have lessons here at Starfish that use Venn diagrams when we talk about finding things we have in common with other people. So if we think about these three components of our program making up a Venn diagram, there's parts where two components overlap at each intersection, right? Two of them overlap. And then in the middle, you have the overlap of all three. So today we just want to talk about what it may look like if only two of them are present and one of them is not. And we're going to talk about what this might look like all the way around the diagram. So for each part of the circle. One of the things that can happen if you think about a program that has direct explicit instruction and it's got a feedback component to it, but it does not have the community amongst the people in the program, this may be some interventions that happen in school. This very well could be one-on-one interventions because it's hard to have a sense of community if a kiddo's in an intervention by themselves. One of the things that comes out of a program that's structured in that way without the sense of community amongst the other kids is our kids start to feel like there's something wrong with them, that they are receiving this therapy or this intervention or this service or this pullout because there's something wrong with them. They feel isolated. It definitely comes from more of a deficit type model. Why don't other kids go to this? I've heard that when I was in the classroom and I had kids that would go to speech therapy. Why don't other kids from my class go to this? Kids who are going to, I try not to mention specific models and therapies and programs because I don't, my intention is never to say that we're better than any other program. We are different. Right. So our program may not be the best program for everybody, just like other programs aren't what's best for everybody. So I try to be careful about not calling out specific models or programs because that's not my intention. We're not better than other programs. We're just different. So if you're wondering why I kind of go around naming other interventions, that's why. But definitely the ones that are set up to be one-on-one, I think it can be really challenging for kids to come out of that with a positive mindset and to see it as helping them develop skills as opposed to being something that's because they are doing something wrong or they don't know something or they don't know how to do something. It's just more of a deficit-based approach when they don't have connections with other kids who are in the program. And we talked in our last episode about how in our program, we are able to have really open discussions with our kids about what it means to be autistic, about what it means to struggle with emotional regulation, about what it means to feel like other kids think you're annoying. So it just creates this really strong sense of community, of understanding, of having other people who go through similar situations. Shared experiences, I think, is how I've referred to it in the past. So I think that's, programs that have the explicit learning component and the feedback component, obviously they're designed for learning, right? They're designed for kids to be able to learn and grow. But when your kiddo doesn't have connections with other people who are also learning and growing in the same way, it can make it feel like they're having to do it because there's something wrong with them. So that's my challenge when it comes to programs that don't have that sense of community, that aren't in a group setting, that don't involve, other kids. Even, we mentioned that we have kids that are all over the ability spectrum. And I think that's another great way. We got kids who really grow by helping kids who are not as far along as they are. We've got kids who, it just creates a lot of opportunities for kids to support each other. And, the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. So when we have kids who can teach things to other kids because they are further along, it's a great opportunity for them to be able to grow. We also have kids that sometimes see actions and choices and behaviors in other kids that they recognize in themselves. And so that makes it really helpful and easy for us to be able to move forward when they can see what it looks like when someone else is doing the same things that they do. So that's really helpful as well. It's much less personal when they're able to see that, oh, someone else is doing that thing that I do, and that's what it looks like.
Right.
It's interesting how quickly that can make somebody reconsider the choices that they're making. Ramiro, is there anything else that you want to say about that? Just programs, the difference between Starfish and programs that don't have that shared community?
I think just like expanding on what your last point was, where students are learning a lot from each other. It definitely relates to just the overall relationship they have with their peers compared to a parent or compared to an authority figure. Even you or me, like we're not seen as someone who controls what the students do, and they know that,
That's a great
they
point.
sense that. And so for them to be able to learn from each other naturally, or through like asking questions, or being more like direct about it, like from their point of view, it's a lot easier for them to accept things, I feel like, where they may be reluctant or have a difficult time taking advice or taking guidance from a therapist or a parent or someone in that authoritative role. So yeah, I mean, the community aspect of our program absolutely has a lot of like direct, what's the word?
Benefits.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as well as indirect and like nonverbal, or like just like underlying benefits as well.
Yeah, you know what, another thing that I've noticed, and we've talked about this before, that it's really normal for kids to feel anxious about coming here when they first start, right? It's pretty typical, especially if they've been in other programs or therapies. It's something new, it's somewhere they've never been. It's pretty typical. But it's funny because we have kids who literally run in the door, to come to their class or their game time or whatever. We have kids that sit in the waiting room and are chatting it up or showing each other videos or telling jokes or, whatever the case may be. Kids are generally, very rarely do we have kids that come in and are like grumpy and, kind of standoffish. That doesn't happen very often. And so I think it's part of that it's almost like peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
But in a positive peer pressure,
Mhm.
because I think if you're the only person going to this program or this intervention and you're walking in the door by yourself,
Mhm.
however you feel is however you feel. But when you're in a place like this and the energy is, people are glad to be here, they're excited, they're happy,
Mhm.
that becomes kind of contagious. And
Yeah.
I think it also gives a sense of what the environment is like here. If you're
Mhm.
if you come into here, the first time and you see 5 other kids in the waiting room and, there's a lot of energy and they're
Mhm.
waiting to come in and we open the door and they're running in, I think it just helps kids really have a sense of what the energy is like here,
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay, so that's the first two, having the discrete, explicit instruction and also having feedback, but not having that connection.
Mhm.
So next we're going to talk about programs or interventions that may have feedback and connection, community, but no explicit direct instruction.
Mhm.
So that could be one of the examples that I was thinking of was if you're on a sports team, but it's more of a social team, right? It's not. So I know in some adult sports leagues, there are competitive sports
Mhm.
teams and there are social sports teams,
Mhm.
right? So if you really want to play soccer, go be on a competitive team. But if you just want to hang out with other people who also like to dork around on a soccer field, you can join a more social team. This is a lot of, sometimes we'll have parents ask if their kids can just do the cohorts, if they can just do the outings that we do, as opposed to being in the lessons or the game time. So sometimes if people want to join our program, that's what they want, right? Is the outings, but that's the feedback and the community without the explicit instruction. They're missing the lessons that we teach here in our program. And so the challenge with that is that if your kiddo struggles with friendships, there's a reason.
Mhm.
It's not just because they haven't met the right kids. It's not just because they're not in the right environment. If your kiddo is struggling with making and maintaining friendships, there's a reason for that. There's something going on that they haven't learned, that they don't know. And that's where our lessons come in.
Mhm.
So without that component, your kiddo may make connections with other kids, but that's probably not going to translate outside of our program.
Right.
Because there's a reason that that's been a challenge for them in the first place. So back to my soccer example, you could have 7 different people in your soccer social club that are giving you feedback about 7 different things, and they're all trying to be helpful,
Mhm.
but they're all telling you what they think you should be doing, how they think you should be kicking the ball. And then 2 minutes later, someone else sees you do that and says, oh, well, you should try it this way.
Mhm.
And then someone else says, well, why are you doing it that way? And so you can be getting all kinds of feedback from people who truly care about you and have your best interest at heart. But if there's no overriding curriculum, goals, lessons,
Mhm.
where are we going?
Yeah.
Right? Where are we going with this? It's just different random people giving different random feedback. If you think about, I'm sure a lot of, for those of you guys that are listening that have kids, I'm sure your kids have been in different social situations, a lot of outings, activities, things that are just purely social. But are they actually learning social skills in that environment? They're getting feedback, I'm sure,
Mhm.
and they are creating connections, probably. Are they actually learning anything?
Mhm.
3 months from now, do you see that their interactions with other people are different than they were before they started? We often get feedback around the holidays that people's extended family members notice a difference in our students. That's happens a lot around Thanksgiving and Christmas time, that we'll get emails from parents that say, oh my gosh, like my mom, who hasn't seen my kid in 3 months, made a comment about how he was asking her questions. Or do you know what I mean? Just this last Christmas, a parent said, for the first time ever, my kid got something she didn't really want for Christmas, and she just said thank you, which is something we have a whole lesson about gifts right before the holidays. So that's that point where, you know, our kids are actually learning things and growing and moving forward. So the challenge with programs that don't have explicit direct instruction is that whatever people are learning is based on who they're paying attention to, or who's choosing to give them feedback, or who they're choosing to spend their time with. So they might be learning conflicting information. They might not be learning anything at all. They may just be having a fun social experience. And while that's awesome for our kids to have fun social experiences, it doesn't help them grow socially. It's not about them not being around other kids. If your kid is in school, they've been around kids since they were 5, right? I mean, if your kid has siblings, they've been around kids since they were born, or since their siblings were born. It's not the case that our kids don't have friends because they're not around other kids. It's not an opportunity thing. It's a skill thing. It's that there are things they don't know or don't understand about how they are coming across to other people.
Right.
Or maybe they haven't learned how to engage in conversations yet. Maybe they're struggling with how to be part of a group, but it's not things that they gain just by hanging out with other kids. So is there anything else that you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I mean, just overall, like for me, my background, I worked for 5 years at a summer camp for people with special needs. And so that kind of a program, obviously it's a lot of fun, a lot of recreational things, a lot of social engagement, a lot of fun based around those programs. And so I had a blast working there, but transitioning into Starfish, me and Steph had conversations when I had first started, or like a couple months into like my time here, and I noticed the difference where a program like Starfish, where students come to not only engage and participate in a group setting with each other, but to also learn and grow from something, it is very impactful for the students who are involved here. Again, not just getting their social engagement with other people, but being able to learn valuable like skills, and like being able to understand opportunities when they are presented to them in the real world, and being able to apply what they take, or like being able to take what they have at Starfish and apply it to school or other social settings. Like that is where the true value is in our program. It's like, yes, it's fun, yes, it's engaging, but it's beyond that. It goes 5 steps further than that, you know. So yeah, I definitely picked up on that difference where, you know, social recreational environment compared to a program that is built around that, but also including valuable lessons.
Yeah. I remember, Ramiro, when you first started, that it was challenging for you to do the feedback part of it, right? I remember it. I mean, you guys, it's very clear that Ramiro has a super kind personality, right? I mean, he's very giving, very nurturing, very kind. This is why he does our parent support, because I'm just much more black and white and to the point. And so when Ramiro first started, giving the kids feedback was challenging, right? Because this probably would have been a great conversation for the last episode if I would have thought about it. But I think part of it too is that when we talked about feedback in that episode, people tend to think that giving direct feedback is disrespectful or rude.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like you think that being that direct with somebody, like how could that possibly be kind and helpful? But for those of us who think differently, we have to have direct feedback. We don't understand indirect feedback.
Right.
We don't, just because you're sighing or rolling your eyes at me doesn't mean that I have any idea why you're doing that. so the indirect feedback can be really confusing for those of us who have, neurodivergent brains. We actually really appreciate the blunt honesty and helping us see how the choice that we're making, what that may look like 5 minutes from now, or 5 days from now. So I think but did you feel like it was like you were being mean, or like?
At first, yes, because in my experience with the camp, it was all about letting the campers do whatever they wanted to do, whether we wanted to or not, whether we liked it or not, whatever they wanted to do, we went along with it. And so I was never used to giving feedback. I was never used to expressing how I feel about how, like, what they were doing or what they were saying, like it was more of just acceptance and like letting them do whatever they want and just being there to give them a thumbs up and to support them through that. But yeah, if it's about teaching our students how to grow socially and how to build relationships that are sustainable and that are lasting in the real world, in school, and whatever it might be, it really does come down to providing the feedback and also the lessons behind that feedback, like as to why we're giving them feedback and as to why the feedback is helpful and it's not disrespectful, like how in my mind, like it was meant to, or how I thought it was, so yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you have that background, because we're able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. It gives us a point of comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the Venn diagram. If kids are in a program that has feedback and it has community, but there's no direct explicit instruction, is what is it that people are actually giving them feedback about? Where is it that we're going? What's the goal here? What are we moving toward? And you could have 5 different people, trying to teach 5 different things, because there's no cohesiveness. There's no, this is what we're about. We operate this way. One of the things with Ramiro and me, there were a couple weeks in March that I was on the other side of the country, and Ramiro was here without me. And I know I had zero concern about anything that may be said or done, because I know that Ramiro operates the same way that I do. We've worked together for so long now that there's even times where a kiddo will say something to one of us and we'll respond and be like, oh, that's exactly what I would have said. Yeah. So we've worked together for so long now that, I had no issue not being here and knowing that I wasn't worried about anything, because Ramiro and I operate the same way. How did you feel about those couple weeks that I wasn't here?
Yeah, I mean, the same way, where like I knew that like I was confident in my decisions and like how to guide conversations or how to guide situations just based on the amount of experience we have had together, and like understanding. Like I remember like the first month that I was working here, I took so many notes on like how Steph would say things, or like what she would say or what she would ask, and like just so many different things to make sure that we were on the same page with everything, because I know Steph wasn't always going to be by my side, especially back then when we had like a different structure even, but yeah, no, I was definitely confident in understanding like the underlying like idea of Starfish and like what we're teaching, regardless of whether or not you were able to be there with me or not. So,
yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so then the third part of the Venn diagram would be the first part, which is the direct explicit instruction, and then the connection part with other kids, but without feedback. So you're getting instruction, you're hanging out with other people who are doing the same thing, but there's no feedback being given. And I was thinking of an actual example of this. In the fall, I started working on getting my private pilot license. And that is similar to a driver's license in that there's a written test and then there's an actual, field test, performance test, in this case called a flight test, right? So I really wanted to start with the written test because I need to be able to see incremental progress. I need to be able to see milestones and benchmarks along the way in order to keep me motivated, because it's a big undertaking. It's a big process. And so I thought, okay, I can do the written part of it first, and I can go take my written test and pass that, and then start my flight training. So I at least will have some progress already built up along the way. So I have an online flight training course that I was doing in the fall, and was actually really motivated. It was so much information, and it's so technical. My brain was exploding on like a daily basis. I mean, it was really overwhelming, but I was really persistent with it. And so what you do is when you finish all the coursework, you take 2 practice tests through this program, and you can take them as many times as you want to. You have to pass it twice. And once you pass the practice test twice, it's, it's different questions and stuff each time. But once you pass the practice test twice, then you get your authorization to go actually take the written exam at a testing location. So I had gone through all the lessons. There are many tests along the way, so you can make sure, and they do, okay, anyways, there's many tests along the way. So I get to my 2 practice tests. I remember this was right before Christmas, and I took my first practice test and I failed. And I noticed that the main questions I was missing had to do with charts, aviation charts that I never really understood. And I kind of guessed my way through as I was doing my studying. I never really understood them. And because it's an online program, there's nobody for me to ask. There's nobody for me to sit down with who can tell me, what I'm missing or what I'm not understanding, or why that question should have been this or whatever. So I did another practice test, and same result, I failed. And for the same reason, it was these charts, these aviation charts, that I realized I actually didn't really know how to read. And because the program is just black and white, question and answer, here's the information, I was not getting the feedback so that I would know along the way that this was going to be a problem. And I failed 2 practice tests. That was 5 months ago, and I have not done anything else to move forward with that. It was very defeating. So it was like I spent all this time learning what I thought I needed to learn, and then the moment of truth comes. It makes me think of kids being in a program and learning everything they think they're supposed to learn, and then trying to go practice it in the real world and falling flat on their face, but not know it. Like, well, but I learned all this. If I counted the hours I spent going through the coursework, watching the videos, studying, practicing, holy cow, only to fall on my face when I tried to actually take the practice test. And so it really just made me think of our kids that, we can buy them social skills books. We can buy them curriculum. We can, online videos and social stories and whatever. But if nobody's actually giving them helpful social feedback, they're going to fall on their face when they try to actually implement this. And this is one of my challenges with social skills when people are just being taught explicit social skills. Is social is fluid. It's dynamic. So, we've given these examples before, but if one of our kids is taught that, you say hello to people that every time you see them, we've had situations where they're now interrupting our lesson to say hello to a kid who's come in late. Or, if you always ask somebody, how was your weekend? Well, once you actually know that person, that becomes a really generic question to ask them, right? Once you know them, we should be asking them more personal questions based on what we know about them. And so that's one of my personal kind of soapbox issues with kids being taught explicit social skills, is that those don't really translate to the real world where everything's dynamic and shifting and changing. And then even, that's conversations are so difficult for our kids because a conversation is always shifting and changing. And so part of what we work on here is paying attention to the shifts
Mhm.
and being able to follow the shift, and being able to stay up to date with the conversation, right?
Right.
And not making a comment about something somebody said 3 turns ago.
Mhm.
And if people move on from a topic, being able to move on with it.
Mhm.
Because I find a lot of our kids get lost in conversations because it's so dynamic.
Right.
It's just always changing. So that was my point about, if you have a program where there's explicit instruction and there's community, there's other people learning and doing the same thing, but you're not actually getting feedback.
Mhm.
You're not actually having people help you see, where things might fall apart, or
Mhm.
where you could do something a little bit differently, or where this strategy might make sense. Or even, telling you what to look out for. Like, we even in our program, we talk about what are the signs that somebody's friendly teasing you
Mhm.
versus mean teasing you. Right. I mean, just really important things like that. In our dating program, last week, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how to handle if you ask somebody out and they say something like, I'm really busy.
Mhm.
It's not a yes and it's not a no.
Mhm.
Right. So the things that are much more fluid, we support our kids through those, right?
Mhm.
We give them feedback. So that's the disconnect when you have a program that has curriculum, explicit instruction, and connection, but no one actually giving feedback and support along the way,
Mhm.
is you can end up with people like me who go all the way through the program and then fail the test.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, I haven't even picked it back up again. That was 5 months ago.
Mhm.
So then you just end up with a lot of frustration,
Right.
and time and money and, whatever that's
Mhm.
been given. All right. Anything else you want to say about that one? Just the concept of the lack of feedback.
Um, I guess like I feel like that's the most. Hmm. I feel like the natural flow of conversations and different situations, that's where I feel like our students learn, like you can almost say like they learn the most in those situations, just because of how natural it is. And it's not about following a step-by-step program. It's not about filling in the blanks of like what to say when. It's about like being able to think on like in the moment and process through what's happening, like who you're talking to and how y'all communicate with each other, and like just everything that's involved in those kinds of moments. Like, yeah, it really is a matter of being able to do so in the moment and having a group like this to be able to practice with, so that way it can be taken out of Starfish and like brought into school, or brought when families coming over for the holidays, or if they're going to a summer camp over the summer, like wherever it could be. Like it's not just about following a step-by-step process, or um like just having the social outlet with someone. It's about like being able to read in between the lines and learning how to navigate through conversations, and like picking up on the nonverbals and all the different social cues, and yeah, just understanding all that kind of stuff that you can only learn in the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just was thinking about something I'd never thought of it this way before, but I think the curriculum, the content is the what, and yeah, so the content is the what. I
Mhm.
think the feedback is the why.
Mhm.
Because you get to see, oh, that didn't work because of this, or
Mhm.
like I tried that, but oh, that's the why.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it now. Even seeing other people practice something and seeing whether it's successful or not. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, I get that. I see that.
Mhm.
And then the community part is the how, right?
Mhm.
When you're able to be around other people doing the same thing and you're able to practice what you're learning, like you get the how of it,
Yeah.
right? By practicing.
Mhm.
So I think it's the what, it's the why, and it's the how. And
Mhm.
then that's when it all comes together in one piece.
Mhm.
And that's when our kids come out, really gaining some cool skill. I can actually hear, we have kids here in the waiting room and we can hear them.
Yep.
Which is awesome, because this is older kids, and so their parents are not here with them,
Yeah.
which means if we hear people, it's our students talking to each other.
Mhm.
And so that's always super cool,
Yeah.
because it means that they have connections with each other, right? And they have things that I have no idea what they're talking about, but that they have things that they're talking about in a public waiting room.
Yeah.
So that's super cool. Okay, so I think, let's see. Yeah, so program registration for this summer closes on May 31st. If you want to join us via Zoom this summer. We will have another registration window for the fall. So if you're listening to this after May 31st, you can still go to our website and get on our waiting list for the fall. I don't know what's happening out there, but May 31st will be our deadline to register for summer to join us. And also, you know, the podcast, obviously, it's a great way to just listen and learn more about what we do. Being on our email list, we are on Facebook. So all kinds of ways to stay in touch with us. This is our last week before we go on break before summer. So we're going to see if we can record one more episode before we go. But just know that if there's a break in our podcast episodes, it's because we take breaks throughout the year as well. So I'm trying to get ahead of the podcast schedule so that we have one coming out every week, but it may happen. It may not. But okay, we will see you guys again. Maybe next week, maybe the week after. We're always here if anybody wants to email with any questions, anything, you know, hello@starfishsocialclub.org. So we'll see you guys again next time.